Live. This is News 8 at 11.
Marking the one-year anniversary of the death of George Floyd.
Here in the Valley, activists honoring and remembering the life of George Floyd, what they have to say coming up.
Tonight, Connecticut and the country remember the legacy of a man who sparked a movement worldwide.
Honoring some of the changes made in the name of George Floyd and looking to make more in Avon.
Floyd's killing at the hands of a Minneapolis police officer has forced change in departments.
I think it's helpful to understand the definition of use of force and when it should be applied and how it should be applied.
Adjustments are being made by officers across the country.
A somber day across the nation. President Biden meeting with the family of George Floyd today, 1 year after the 46-year-old's death. His killing sparking a global reckoning over systemic racism and a movement for police reform. While the president initially made today the deadline for Congress to pass a police reform bill, those negotiations are still underway.
The country and the world celebrated Floyd's life today. In Connecticut, we have team coverage, including a memorial march in Avon that was organized by students. But we begin with News 8's Shayna Ferreira, who joins us from Derby, where a vigil was held.
Here on the Derby Green, activists say it's all about remembering and honoring the life of George Floyd, whose death shook the entire nation and became a catalyst for racial and justice conversations and also conversations on policing. And here in Connecticut, activists say the work is far from over.
Grant us, your people, wisdom to love and not to hate.
Locking arms, lighting a candle, and lifting thoughts of remembrance in honor of George Floyd.
Even though it was a year ago with George Floyd, we continue to see minorities die at the hand of police brutality.
For Valley NAACP chapter president Greg Johnson, Floyd's death still resonates, which is why he says the fight for racial equity is a continued effort.
I never will be one to stand here and say all police are bad, because all police are not bad, but those who are not representing their shield properly, we need to tear down that blue wall and hold them accountable.
A vigil remembering George Floyd and the countless others who've lost their lives.
City, Louisiana. Raphael Javon Minifield.
We want to talk about the fact that he's a father and his daughter doesn't get to see her dad.
Community members and local leaders acknowledging the pain and locking arms in solidarity.
Here we are now, and we need to come together. I don't want you scared when you see a police officer. I don't want your son to be scared. You can't go on like this.
For Ansonia Police Chief Andrew Cota, George Floyd's death was a shifting moment.
For me, it was eye-opening to say, wow, you know, people are going to see this, and there's just no way there's no justification for it. As a police officer, as a father, as a human.
Hoping for equitable change across the board while remembering one man who ultimately should be alive today.
You know, this is a small step forward for progress, hoping that we continue to mobilize everyone in the community, especially here in the Valley, that police are going to be held accountable.
Now here in the Valley, the chapter president of the NAACP says that conversations continue to happen with local police departments to push the needle forward in terms of community policing, and also he's encouraging people to get involved to be part of the change. In Derby, Shayna Ferreira, News 8.
In Avon, another tribute to George Floyd, where it was a student-led march for change. News 8's Bob Wilson continues our team coverage tonight with that.
So the students started here at the library in Avon and then walked around the corner about almost a mile to the high school, chanting and yelling the name George Floyd, remembering and honoring the changes made in his name and looking to do better next year. Hundreds marched and chanted, honoring the change that has been made in the name of George Floyd.
We've seen some legislature change the use of excessive force, not being able to put anybody in a chokehold, not being able to knee on somebody's neck. But we haven't really seen any community-wide change.
Students at Avon High School say there's still a lot more to be done. So they marched from the public library to the high school, where the media was denied entrance by the principal. Students say they want to stop the comments with racial undertones between classmates that really speak volumes.
Little things like writing down your zip code and somebody coming up to you, that's not the Hartford zip code, or put your apartment down.
And students say they hope to make change one student at a time, one parent at a time in Avon.
Connecticut still is in some areas predominantly white, and those wealthier areas still foster so much hatred, or just an unwelcome environment for people of color.
Learning about each other's experiences and listening to that, and kind of brainstorming how we could have an effect on the larger community of Avon as a whole.
They say by changing what goes on inside their school, they can make a larger change in their community.
It's providing teachers of color a more inclusive curriculum, giving people more cultural understanding and more perspective of other people's lives, and especially brown and black people's lives in America.
Address the use of slurs more than what we do now, and as well as stop teaching a whitewashed version of history.
And the students say for all the change that they were able to make this year, they hope to double or even triple that when they're back here again for the 2nd anniversary of George Floyd's passing. We're in Avon. Bob Wilson, News 8.
And since the death of George Floyd, data from the National Conference of State Legislatures found at least 82 bills have been passed across the country aimed at police reform and transparency. One of those, the Police Accountability Law in Connecticut, is designed to significantly reform policing in the state. The law was passed last year, and it bans police chokeholds and mandates police body cameras.
It's a good thing. We have body cams coming in, and I know a lot of police officers that want them, so it can tell the whole story.
Other changes include intervention if a fellow officer is using force, no searches of a vehicle, pulled over unless probable cause, and officers no longer have qualified immunity and can be sued. If you missed our special, The Agents of Change, Turning Words into Action, you can watch it again on our website, WTNH.com, and the News 8 app. We explore the work for change in Connecticut and those working to make it happen.